Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 200. On tonight's episode, we're going to talk about the new report that Ghislaine Maxwell has come out and said she doesn't believe that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. She believes he was murdered. And this is according to a source from The Sun. Now, the article we're going to read is from the Daily Mail, but the original source is attributed to The Sun. And if you've been paying attention to the story, you can probably guess who their source is, right? So, my question is, how is Ghislaine Maxwell still piping off while she's skulking around in these hidey holes? Also, what is she really trying to say with this statement? We know that Ghislaine Maxwell doesn't come out and say things just to say them. There's always another level to what she's up to. She's always manipulating the situation, and she is always letting everybody know that she still holds the keys to where all the bodies are buried, right? And we saw that with the hacked email scam and the other things that she's come out and said, trying to sue the estate. Every time she says something in public through her sources or through sources that the Sun supposedly has, well, there's always doublespeak going on. There's always more than what is on the surface. And that is typical for Ghislaine Maxwell. That's how these people conduct themselves, especially people that are adept at navigating these kind of waters. And Ghislaine Maxwell is very adept at navigating waters such as these, and she's certainly a professional at trying to control the narrative. So let's jump into the article and see just exactly what this source had to say. This article is from the Daily Mail, and the headline is, Ghislaine Maxwell suggests her pedophile friend Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in prison and says she is not convinced he killed himself. The author, Ryan Fahey. From the headline, I can kind of, say for the first time ever, I agree with Ghislaine Maxwell. It certainly doesn't seem like he killed himself in prison, right? From all the coincidences that we've seen that led up to the death of Jeffrey Epstein, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow for anybody who has looked at this case in the big picture. For anybody who has added context to what's going on here, it's very difficult to swallow the pill that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Ghislaine Maxwell is not convinced her former lover, co-conspirator, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, a source close to the socialite, co-conspirator, has said. Epstein, who had already been found guilty in previous child sex cases, was found hanged in his cell at Manhattan's Metropolitan Correctional Center, where he was awaiting trial on a string of sex trafficking charges. Now remember, this isn't a facility where people are killing themselves on a regular basis. Up until Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, I believe it was 2 decades since somebody else had killed themselves at this facility. Now, don't confuse that for me saying this is a nice place to be. It is not. We've seen the pictures, we've heard the reports, we've heard what people have to say about the place, and it is certainly not the kind of place I would want to be, that's for sure. But at the same time, we can't just act like this is a place where people are killing themselves or being murdered on a regular basis, because the stats and the facts don't back that up. And for the whole entire narrative of them expecting us just to believe that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself in this prison without any sort of evidence to back that up, except for what we've heard from the medical examiner, it's very difficult for me to believe that that's the case. Maxwell, who is said to be in hiding as the FBI's nets closes around Epstein's circle, was accused yesterday of procuring girls for the pedophile financier. Just pedophile's fine. We don't need to add financier, because guess what? He wasn't a financier. How about instead of financier, we call him a Ponzi scheme specialist? Because that's what he was, right? A Ponzi scheme specialist. In England, and taking them to the U.S. to have sex with him on his private jet. She is not convinced he killed himself. Who is? The only one is the medical examiner in New York, the Sun reported a source close to Maxwell saying. Again, I have my suspicions on who the source is, and it's probably the same source that Maxwell has been using as her mouthpiece throughout this whole entire thing. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But my question is, if you were close to Maxwell and she was feeding you information, wouldn't you feel it incumbent upon you to try and talk some sense into her and try and talk her into turning herself in? I know if she was my friend, those would be the two choices. Either you turn yourself in and you defend yourself from these accusations, or you and I can't associate with each other, because I'm not hanging out with somebody who refuses to come and stand before the man and defend their name. Instead, she hides and she skulks and she releases all of this stuff through her mouthpieces in the media, and it's all obfuscation, right? You can't believe anything Ghislaine Maxwell is saying, and this all right here, who knows what she really means? Oh yeah, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself in prison, but it wasn't the way you think it was, and it could have been somebody else killed him there, but it wasn't part of a conspiracy. And these are the kind of things Ghislaine Maxwell talks about because she is trying to muddy the waters, right? She doesn't want the focus on her. And she is very, very, very astute when it comes to this form of manipulation, folks. And we have to beware every time we hear about Ghislaine Maxwell talking about anything through anybody, through any sort of source. We have to take it with a grain of salt, and we have to try and read between the lines to see what she's really getting at. The only thing anybody knows for sure is that he died on a particular date at a particular time. Prisons are dangerous places, and particularly dangerous for pedophiles. You don't have to buy into a conspiracy theory to believe that he was killed in prison. No, but you'd have to be pretty stupid to think otherwise at this point. What do you think? Jeffrey Epstein was just roaming around freely, and he had the guards forgot to lock his jail cell, and somebody decided to creep in there and kill him because he was a pedophile? He was in special housing. He was in the SHU. He was in the same area where they kept El Chapo. Nobody had access to his cell, unless, of course, you want to play the game of Nicholas Tartaglione. That could be the only person we're talking about here. If anybody murdered him, or anybody had the chance to murder him, it would be Nicholas Tartaglione, no? And if it wasn't Nicholas Tartaglione, then the people that were charged with watching him must have been in on it, or some of them must have been in on it. Somebody must have looked the other way if that's the case, because how else would they get into the jail cell? So I don't think that it was just a random act of violence because he was a pedophile. I think that's a cop-out. I think that's Ghislaine Maxwell playing games again. I think that's Ghislaine Maxwell trying to take the spotlight off of what really occurred here and try and make it so it's not an overarching criminal enterprise, right, that she's involved with, basically trying to distance herself here, saying, come on, he could have just been killed in prison. It was not because he had secrets or anything like that. That's crazy talk. That's basically what she's saying here. And the fact of the matter is, none of the facts line up with that train of thought. Now, if he was in general population and he was running around in Gen Pop and, in the chow line or in the shower and he got caught slipping like that, all right, I could definitely say random act of violence. We know that pedophiles are at the very top of the list when it comes to other inmates. There's no doubt about that. But Jeffrey Epstein wasn't in that situation. And for Maxwell to come out here and say, I believe he was killed in prison, but I don't think it was part of any sort of conspiracy or that any of the powers that be had anything to do with it. Well, that's because you want to take the spotlight off of yourself, right? Did Maxwell have something to do with it? I mean, I don't have any evidence that points that way, but who knows, right? At this point, who knows who had this guy clipped? Epstein's cause of death was ruled as a suicide by hanging by the New York coroner, but an investigator hired by Epstein's estate said the scene was more consistent with murder. Well, we've covered that ad nauseum at this point, and we know that Dr. Michael Baden is of the mind that it was obviously a homicide, and we've heard from other professionals who have said the same thing. But we've heard from others who have said it looks like a suicide to them. So again, without transparency from those in charge, the Department of Corrections and the Justice Department, we're left to our own opinions here and which medical professional we want to listen to. Because I'll tell you what, the state's examiner provided zero evidence or zero proof. It was basically, all right, well, I'm telling you this, so it's the truth. You better listen to me. That's basically the evidence that was provided, right? Can we see these videos that Barr supposedly saw? I mean, can we get on that? Can those be released? How about somebody leak something like that? Epstein survivor Virginia Roberts claims Maxwell recruited her into the pedophile circle before he forced her to have sex with his wealthy and powerful friends, including the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, Prince Andrew, when she was 17. The prince has denied any wrongdoing. Of course he has, but we all know that he is a lying sack of shit, okay? And in my opinion, so is Ghislaine Maxwell. This lady is just as guilty of what went on as Jeffrey Epstein, in my opinion, and she needs to be held to account. And anybody that's taking up for her in the media or supposedly as a friend or anything like that, shame on you. I mean, shame on you at this point. What is wrong with somebody who would call this person their friend, who is being accused of this, and who doesn't even have the decency to come forward and defend themselves? Like Maxwell, Roberts also senses foul play around Epstein's death. In December, she tweeted, "I am no conspiracist. I rely on facts, things that are real and I can see. The problem here is we can't see anything at all. It's all gone missing." Epstein's case from the start to now has been shrouded in secrecy and deceit. Hashtag Epstein suicide cover-up. And look, she is not wrong. How long have they been playing games with this Jeffrey Epstein case? How long have they been manipulating the facts to fit their narrative? How long have they been silencing people? They're still doing it to this day, folks. They are still doing it to this day, silencing these ladies, these survivors, and trying to steer the narrative in a way that's beneficial to them and their reputations. But they forgot about something. And you know what that is? They forgot about you, the people that they can't silence. They can't come after everybody. They can't force everybody to stop talking about them. You know why? Because that's not how any of this works anymore. They used to be able to control the narrative and steer it wherever they wanted by using their stooges in the legacy media. But now, that is all bypassed. It's irrelevant at this point. And we see it time and time again, and we see just how much of an impact it has on investigations like this. Another accuser of Epstein asked where the investigation was into his murder. The conspiracy theories suggest Epstein was killed to protect his powerful friends from scandal. You know what? What's more of a conspiracy at this point? That Jeffrey Epstein died because of negligence, or that Jeffrey Epstein was clipped? Ask yourselves that. When you look at this whole entire case, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist either, I'm very skeptical of most things, okay? But being skeptical doesn't mean you don't believe evidence when it's presented to you. Being skeptical means you're skeptical of things until the evidence is provided. And I am very skeptical of most conspiracy theories. I am very skeptical of people that spin conspiracy theories. But when it comes to the Jeffrey Epstein case, and especially his death, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory to ask questions about what occurred. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I think it's a cover-up. And I believe that the evidence points in that direction as well. If there's other evidence out there that points in a different direction, then by all means, please present it to me, because I follow the evidence wherever it leads. And if there is substantial evidence out there that points that this was 100% a suicide, I am more than willing to believe that. The problem is that evidence has not been provided yet, and all we have are more lies and, trust us, BS from the Department of Corrections. The Maxwell source, however, said the theories were conspiracy conclusions, and that in prison there are murderers with a hatred for those guilty of sex offenses against children. Yeah, no doubt, we talked about that. That's not incorrect, right? But it is more of a way to lead you away from what is really going on here. Maxwell She is using the press again to get her message out, and it is never what it means, what it says on its face. It is always, the meaning is always something different with her. So I just don't trust a word that comes out of Ghislaine Maxwell's mouth, and I am very, very, very skeptical of anything that she is saying, and I believe that it's always a message with her, and there is always a bigger picture with Ghislaine Maxwell. So when we have articles like this, we always have to read in between the lines and really try and see what she's talking about, because there's zero chance that Jeffrey Epstein was killed just in some random act of violence in prison. Okay, that did not occur. So I don't know where she's going with this. I haven't really put all the pieces together yet, but there's something else here, like usual with Ghislaine Maxwell, and I'm sure we'll see just exactly where her I don't know what her strategy here is in the coming days as she talks more to the media, because it's usually more than one comment, right? When she starts talking, we hear 2 or 3 different reports of what she has to say, and then you just have to try and tie all of that stuff together and figure out what her message truly is. So I'll be looking forward to see if there's more messages from Ghislaine Maxwell in the future through the media and through her sources, whoever those might be. But what we'll do is we'll definitely stay on top of it, and we'll make sure we chain them all together, and we'll continue to read in between the lines, especially when we're dealing with Ghislaine Maxwell. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, I'll be back tomorrow and we'll do it all over again.